The voice that wasn't mine. Daniel Kovac never believed in anything he couldn't explain. Ghosts were fiction. Possession was psychology. Fear was just misunderstanding the brain. That was his mindset when he started the project. He was a media student in Eastern Europe. 21 years old, focused on documentary work. His final university project was supposed to be simple: record himself sleeping for 30 nights. Analyze behavior. Find hidden subconscious patterns. Nothing more. He even laughed when he set up the camera. His room was small. Bed against the wall. Desk near the window. Laptop always open. The camera was placed on a tripod facing directly at him. Night 1 was boring. He slept normally. Moved slightly. Turned once. Nothing unusual. He almost gave up after that. Night 2 changed nothing. He reviewed the footage in the morning while eating cereal. Normal sleep. Normal breathing. Nothing even slightly strange. He started thinking the project was pointless. Still, he continued, because quitting felt like failure. Night 3 was the first glitch. At first, he didn't notice it. Only when he slowed the footage did he see it. At exactly 3:12 a.m., Daniel's body moved. Not a twitch, not a turn. He sat up completely straight. He didn't wake up normally. There was no gradual movement. It was instant, like someone pressed pause on sleep and play on something else. His eyes stayed closed. His mouth opened slightly. And then he spoke. At first, Daniel thought it was sleep talking. He even laughed while watching it. But then he increased the volume. And everything changed, because the voice that came out was not his. It was deeper, slower, completely wrong in tone. The voice said, "You finally turned it on." Daniel froze instantly. He rewound the clip, listened again. Same words, same voice, the same exact moment. He leaned closer to the screen, trying to convince himself it was audio distortion. But the lips didn't match properly. His mouth moved slightly delayed, like the sound was coming from somewhere else. Not from him, but through him. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the clip over and over. Each time, the same result. At Shanwu Thendin Sharifin, the body wakes. The voice speaks. You finally turned it on. He decided to test it. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe his mind was tired. Maybe he was imagining patterns. So the next night, he set up 2 cameras, different angles, same position. He even wrote a note on his desk. If anything happens, it's sleep disorder. He laughed while writing it, but it didn't feel funny anymore. Night 4 arrived. Daniel slept normally. Deep sleep. No disturbances. Until, both cameras captured the same moment. His body sat up again, perfectly synchronized. But this time, something was different. His head slowly turned toward the camera, even though his eyes were closed. And then he spoke again. But this time the voice said something else. Something that made Daniel's stomach drop. "Why are you watching me alone?" Daniel's heart stopped for a second, because he wasn't watching live. He was asleep. There was no way he was conscious. And yet, the voice sounded like it was responding to him. He checked the footage again, zoomed in, frame by frame. That's when he noticed it, a detail he missed before. His lips weren't just moving. They were slightly smiling. Not naturally, not human-like. Something forced. The next morning, Daniel deleted nothing. He couldn't. He started feeling something strange, like the recordings mattered, like stopping would be worse than continuing. A feeling he couldn't explain, almost like curiosity wasn't his anymore. That day, he told a friend about it. The friend laughed, called it sleep paralysis, suggested stress, suggested caffeine, suggested anything except what Daniel felt it was becoming. But Daniel didn't feel reassured. He felt watched, even during daylight. That night, he said everything again. Camera, laptop, audio recorder, extra microphone. He even left the door unlocked, just to test reality, a mistake he would later regret. At exactly 3:12 a.m., he didn't just sit up. This time, he stood, slowly, like he was being pulled upward. His feet touched the floor, and he stood perfectly still, facing the wall. The camera recorded everything. No sound at first, just silence. Then the voice returned, clearer than before, closer, like it was inside the room. You opened it twice now. Pause. That means you're listening. Daniel's body moved slightly. Not walking, not turning, just leaning forward, like responding without permission. The next morning, Daniel woke up with a strange feeling. Not fear, not panic, something worse. Missing time. His alarm had gone off at 8 a.m. like always, but when he checked his phone, something didn't make sense. There was a gap in his recordings, a full 1 minute and 37 seconds unaccounted for. Between 3:12 a.m. and 3:14 a.m., he opened the footage immediately, hands slightly shaking. The video showed him standing in the room, still facing the wall, completely motionless. Then, at 10:50 秒, the audio cut out. No sound, no movement, just silence. But the camera didn't stop recording. It kept running. And that's when Daniel saw something that made his stomach tighten. The room was darker in the footage than in real life. Not just lighting, something else. Like the image itself had lost detail. Then, at 10:40 秒, his body moved again. Slowly, very slowly, he turned his head toward the camera and whispered something, but the audio was missing. The microphone file was corrupted. Daniel leaned closer to the screen, replayed it again, same result. No sound, just lip movement. But this time, he noticed something new. Behind him, in the mirror, a shadow, not his, standing slightly too tall, slightly too still. And it didn't move when he did. He paused the video instantly, heart beating hard. He told himself it was reflection distortion, compression artifact. Anything logical? Anything normal? But then he checked the second camera, the backup angle. And that's when everything became worse. On the second recording, there was no shadow, no distortion, no figure, just Daniel standing. And then suddenly, he walked out of frame without returning. Except, in reality, he never left the room. Daniel looked around his apartment immediately. Everything was exactly where he left it. Door locked, windows closed, no signs of entry, no signs of exit. But his mind kept returning to one thing: if he didn't leave the room, then what walked out on camera? That night, Daniel decided something dangerous. He would stay awake. No sleep, no recording, no camera, just observation. If something was happening at 3:12, he would catch it live. He prepared his room like a lab. Lights on, phone recording live video, laptop open with timestamps, coffee on the desk. He even tied a string around his wrist as a reality anchor. He laughed while doing it, but it wasn't real laughter. At midnight, everything felt normal. At 1 a.m., still fine. At 2:30 a.m., he started feeling pressure in his ears, like the room was tightening. He checked every corner. Nothing. No sound. No movement. He felt it. A sudden drop in temperature. Not cold, but absence of warmth, like the room stopped feeling alive. His phone screen flickered. Once, twice, then stabilized. Everything stopped, completely. Even the sound of his own breathing felt distant, like it was happening to someone else. And then he blinked, just once. When he opened his eyes again, it was 3:13 a.m. He didn't remember blinking. He didn't remember movement. But the string on his wrist was now tied differently, tighter, twisted, like someone adjusted it. His phone recorded the entire moment. He checked it instantly, but the video was corrupted at 3:12 a.m. Again, exactly like before, except this time. There was audio, one single sentence, clear, right in the middle of silence. "You tried to watch me awake." Daniel stepped back from the desk, slowly, because behind him, the mirror reflection didn't step back with him. It stayed still for half a second longer. Then it smiled. Not him, the reflection. And the voice came again. Not from the phone this time. Not from speakers. Not from anywhere physical. Just inside the room. "Now, you understand the rule. Pause. We only meet at 3:12. The lights flickered once. And when they stabilized, Daniel was sitting on the bed. He didn't remember moving there. He looked at his hands. They were slightly dirty, like he had touched something unseen, something that left no trace, and the recording on his phone had started again on its own. Daniel didn't sleep that night. Not really. He stayed on the edge of his bed, staring at the mirror across the room like it might change again. Every small sound in the apartment felt wrong now. The fridge clicking, the pipes shifting, even his own breathing. Everything sounded slightly delayed. At around 2:40 a.m., he tried to convince himself it was stress. He opened his laptop and re-watched the corrupted footage again. The same gap at 3:12. The same missing audio. The same unexplained movement. But this time, he noticed something new. Something he had missed before. In the reflection of the mirror during the recording, there was a second version of him, standing slightly behind his real body. Not fully formed, not fully clear, like it was being rendered slowly. Daniel leaned closer, paused the video, zoomed in. The second figure wasn't exactly copying him anymore. It was slightly off. When Daniel raised his left hand in the recording, the reflection raised its right hand. A delay of half a second, then full synchronization, then delay again, like it was learning the pattern incorrectly. He whispered to himself, "No, that's not possible." But even as he said it, he didn't believe it. The air in the room felt heavier, not physically, emotionally, like the space itself was becoming aware of him. He turned off the laptop, decided to focus only on reality. No screens, no recordings, just observation. He stared directly at the mirror, waiting, watching. The reflection blinked first. Daniel did not. He froze instantly, because he knew for a fact he hadn't blinked yet. The mirror reflection smiled, but Daniel did not. And then the reflection lifted its hand and pressed it against the glass, except Daniel hadn't moved his hand. There was now a difference between him and the reflection, a separation, a break in synchronization. And for the first time, the reflection spoke without him moving his mouth. "You're getting slower." Daniel stepped back. Slowly, the reflection stayed where it was, the hand still on the mirror, but now the hand looked wrong. Too detailed, too sharp, like it belonged to someone else. Then the reflection tilted its head, not matching Daniel at all. "You used to be easier to copy." Pause. "Now you resist." Daniel felt his throat tighten, because he understood something important in that moment. It wasn't copying him anymore. It was comparing him. The room light flickered. Once, then stayed dimmer. And suddenly, Daniel realized something terrifying. The reflection was no longer reacting to him. It was reacting to something behind him. He didn't turn. He couldn't. The reflection's eyes shifted slightly to the left, following something Daniel could not see. Then it smiled wider. "He's closer tonight." Daniel finally turned his head. Slowly. Nothing was behind him. Just empty room. Dark corners. Still air. But when he looked back at the mirror, the reflection was no longer alone. There was a shape behind it. Tall, not fully defined, standing too close, too still. Daniel stepped back immediately, but the reflection stayed calm, almost relieved. "You finally see it now." And then the reflection did something impossible. It stepped forward, not away from Daniel, not mimicking him, but out of alignment, as if the mirror was no longer a barrier. The glass did not break. It did not crack. It simply stopped behaving like glass. And the reflection spoke one last sentence before everything changed. "We were never inside you alone." The mirror went completely black. No reflection, no image, just darkness inside the glass. Daniel stood frozen for several seconds, then slowly approached, very carefully. When he looked into it again, he saw himself, normal again. No shadow, no second figure, nothing behind him. For a moment, relief hit him. Maybe it stopped. Maybe it ended. Maybe it was just hallucination. Then his phone vibrated. A new recording started automatically. File name. Thenshar returned in MP3. And the voice, quiet, almost amused, came from the phone speaker. "You looked away too early." After the mirror went dark, Daniel didn't touch it again. He wrapped it with a bedsheet, then another, then tape. Like distance could undo what he had seen, but it didn't help. Because the problem wasn't the mirror anymore. It was the fact that the recordings kept returning on their own. The file 3_12_return.mp4 kept reappearing on his phone. Even after he deleted it, even after he cleared storage, even after he reset the device once. It came back. Same name, same timestamp. Always Shamosendian Sharfin. Daniel stopped sleeping properly. He started staying awake in public places, libraries, cafes, anywhere with people, because silence at home felt unsafe now. On the third day after the mirror incident, he met his friend Marco. Marco was skeptical but concerned. Daniel tried to explain everything. The recordings, the reflection, the missing time. Marco listened quietly, then sighed. "You're under extreme stress," Marco said. "You need sleep. Not cameras, not experiments." Daniel shook his head. "It's not stress." Marco frowned. "Then what is it?" Daniel hesitated, because saying it out loud made it worse. But he said it anyway. "I think something is using me at night." Marco didn't respond immediately. He just stared at Daniel for a long moment, then forced a small laugh. "That sounds like sleep paralysis." But Daniel noticed something strange. Marco kept glancing at Daniel's phone, like it was distracting him or pulling his attention. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Marco's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his face changed slightly. Not fear, confusion. "You sent me something?" Marco asked. Daniel froze. "No." Marco turned his phone toward him. A video file had appeared. New. Untitled. Time stomp. Daniel felt his stomach drop. "That's not mine," he said immediately. Marco frowned. "But it came from your number." Daniel shook his head. "I didn't send anything." Marco hesitated, then pressed play. The video showed Marco himself, sitting in the same cafe, same table, the same moment. Except, Marco wasn't moving naturally. He was sitting perfectly still. Too still, like a paused version of himself. Then the voice started. Not from Daniel, not from Marco, but from the video itself. "He told you already." Marco blinked. "What?" The video continued. "He thinks it only speaks at night." Pause. "It doesn't." "He thinks it only speaks at night." Pause. "It doesn't." Marco looked at Daniel instantly. "What is this?" Daniel grabbed the phone. "I swear I didn't do this." But then something worse happened. Marco in the video slowly turned his head toward the camera, toward Daniel, even though this moment had happened earlier that day, before they met. And then Marco in real life blinked. Once, twice, slowly. Then he frowned. "Daniel," Marco said quietly, "I don't remember sitting here." Daniel felt cold spread through his body. "What do you mean?" Marco looked confused now. "I remember entering the cafe, but not this conversation." He tapped his head slightly. "Something feels missing." Daniel immediately grabbed the phone again, but the video had changed. Now it showed Marco sitting alone, talking to no one, as if Daniel had never been there. And then the voice returned. "Come closer than before." "Now you understand." Marco suddenly looked up. His expression shifted, not confusion anymore, something else, like recognition. "Do you hear that?" Marco asked. Daniel froze. "Hear what?" Marco slowly tilted his head, like listening to something Daniel couldn't access. Then his eyes widened slightly. And in a voice that was no longer fully his, Marco said, "It already knows you brought him here." Daniel stepped back instantly. "No, Marco, stop." But Marco's expression kept changing, like someone else was adjusting it. Then Marco smiled. Wrongly. Not natural. Not human. "You shouldn't share the pattern." Daniel backed away from the table. People around them didn't seem to notice anything. No reactions. No alarm. Like only Daniel could see it happening. Marco's phone screen went black. Then displayed. 3:12 a.m. Sync complete. Marco blinked one last time, and then spoke normally again. Confused. What just happened? But Daniel already knew. Something had passed through him. Not fully, but enough. Because now it wasn't just happening to Daniel anymore. It was spreading. After what happened with Marco, Daniel stopped trusting distance. Phones weren't safe. Mirrors weren't safe. Even other people weren't safe anymore. Because whatever this was, it didn't stay in one place. It followed attention. That night, Daniel didn't go home. He stayed in a 24-hour study room at the university. Bright lights, people around, security cameras everywhere. He thought being surrounded by others would break the pattern. At first, everything felt normal. Students typing, phones vibrating, soft coffee machine sounds in the corner. Reality felt stable again, for a while. But at 2:47 a.m., Daniel noticed something strange. People around him started slowing down. Not literally freezing, just becoming less responsive, like attention was being drained out of the room. A girl across from him stopped typing mid-sentence. She just stared at her screen, motionless, not asleep, not conscious either, just paused. Daniel looked around. 2 other students were doing the same thing, staring at nothing, still awake, but not present. He checked his phone. Too early, but already wrong. The air felt heavier again. That same pressure from before, like the room was waiting for something. Daniel whispered to himself, "No, not here. Not now." The lights flickered once. A few students looked up briefly, then went still again. Daniel's ears started ringing. Soft at first, then sharper, like a frequency increasing. Everything stopped. Not sound, not movement, but reaction. Nobody responded to anything anymore. Even blinking became rare. Daniel stood up slowly. He looked around the room. Everyone was still there, but nobody felt alive in the same way anymore. Then, his phone vibrated. even though it was on silent. Even though notifications were off, a new video appeared. No download, no sender, just appearing. File name, room signal are active. Daniel didn't open it immediately. He already knew he shouldn't, but something in him wanted to confirm it. Like curiosity wasn't fully his anymore. He pressed play. The video showed the same study room from above. Security camera angle. Everything in real time. All the students were visible, including Daniel. Except Daniel in the video was already standing, even though in reality he was sitting. His recorded self turned toward the camera, slowly, deliberately, and spoke, even though Daniel's real mouth wasn't moving. You thought distance would matter. You thought distance would matter. Daniel felt his breath stop. The students around him didn't react. No one noticed, except him. The video continued. His recorded self walked through the room, passing students who didn't react at all, like he wasn't really there. Then it stopped in front of one student, a boy Daniel didn't recognize. The boy was staring blankly forward, unresponsive. And then the voice came again, not from the video only, from the room itself, from everywhere at once. This one heard earlier. The boy slowly blinked once, then turned his head toward Daniel, even though Daniel hadn't moved. And in a calm, empty voice, the boy said, "It started before you noticed it." Daniel stepped back instantly. "What are you talking about?" he whispered. The boy didn't respond like a normal person. His expression stayed flat, but his voice continued anyway, like it wasn't fully him speaking. 3:12 is not the time. Pause. It's the access point. Daniel's phone vibrated again. Another file appeared. This one titled first_host log. His hands started shaking because he suddenly understood something terrifying. It wasn't repeating nights. It was repeating entries. The boy in front of him slowly smiled. Wrongly. Too slow. Too controlled. You've been opening it more each time. Daniel stepped backward again. But the entire room felt different now. The students weren't just still. They were aligned, like something had synchronized them quietly. Then every screen in the room, laptops, phones, monitors, all switched at once to the same image, a black screen, with white text, 312 connection established. And in perfect unison, every single person in the room spoke at the same time, including Daniel without moving his mouth. "We see you now." The lights went out instantly, complete darkness, no sound, no movement, except Daniel's phone, still glowing, still recording, still active. And in the darkness, the voice whispered directly beside his ear, "You weren't alone tonight." After the study room incident, Daniel stopped trying to outsmart whatever was happening. He realized something simple but terrifying. It didn't care where he was. It didn't care who was watching. It didn't care if he understood. It only cared about one thing. The next day, Daniel left Skopje city center early. He walked without direction, just trying to stay in motion. Movement felt safer than stillness. Stillness felt like surrender. But by midday, something strange started happening. His body began to feel slightly disconnected. Not pain, not numbness, more like delayed ownership. When he lifted his hand to check his phone, it felt like the decision happened a fraction of a second before he thought it. When he turned his head, it felt like something else initiated the movement first, like he was no longer the first signal in his own body. He stopped walking, stood still in a quiet street, looked at his reflection in a shop window. Everything looked normal at first, then he blinked. And for a split second, his reflection didn't. Daniel stepped back immediately. "No," he whispered. "Not again." People walked past him normally. No one reacted. No one noticed anything wrong. But Daniel felt it clearly now. Something was testing real-time control. Not just sleep, not just recordings. His phone vibrated. He almost didn't check it, but his hand moved anyway, automatically, like a reflex that wasn't fully his. A new file appeared. DAY_SYNC_attempt.mp4. He didn't want to open it, but his thumb pressed play anyway. He didn't remember deciding to. The video showed Daniel walking through the same street, from behind, same clothes, same time of day. But in the recording, he was walking slightly faster than reality. In the video, him stopped suddenly, turned toward the camera, even though in real life he hadn't stopped yet. And then the recorded version of Daniel spoke, without hesitation, without delay. "You feel the overlap now?" Daniel's real body froze, because his lips moved slightly at the same time. But he hadn't intended to speak. He covered his mouth instantly. No. The video continued. Recorded Daniel looked around the street, then pointed directly at the camera. This is where it starts leaking into daytime. Daniel dropped the phone slightly. His breathing became uneven, because the word leaking felt accurate. Too accurate. A sudden sensation hit him, like his limbs weren't fully aligned anymore. His right arm moved a fraction of a second before he intended, then stopped, corrected itself. He looked at his hand, slowly clenched his fist. It clenched a moment before he thought about doing it. "That's impossible," he whispered, but it was happening. Right there, in daylight, in front of everyone. He tried to focus, to regain control. He stood still, forced complete stillness. And that's when it got worse. 312 wasn't happening yet, but his body reacted like it already was. A subtle shift in posture, a slight tilt of his head, unrequested. Then, his phone rang. No caller ID, just unknown. He answered without meaning to. Silence. Then the voice, not distorted, not digital, clear, close. "You resisted at night. Pause. Now we adjust daytime stability." Daniel backed into a wall. "Stop this," he said. But his mouth didn't match the words perfectly. Slight delay, slight mismatch. The voice continued calmly, almost instructional. "You are no longer only observing. You are partially integrated." Daniel's heart pounded. "What do you want?" A pause. Then, access continuity. The call ended instantly. His phone screen stayed lit, now showing a single line. Sync level, 18%. Daniel stared at it. What does that mean? Then his body moved again. Not violently, not fully. Just subtly shifting weight from one foot to the other, like something inside him was calibrating balance. He stepped forward quickly, trying to interrupt it, trying to break the pattern. But his foot moved half a second before he intended. And for the first time, he understood that danger wasn't possession like movies. It was a gradual replacement of timing. Not control, but precedence. Something was learning to act slightly earlier than him. And that meant, eventually, he wouldn't be the one initiating anything at all. His phone vibrated again. Another file, 312_preload_sequence. And quietly, inside his head without sound, the voice finished the thought for him. "We're preparing you for uninterrupted presence," Daniel whispered. No, but even that came out a fraction too late. After the daytime incident, Daniel stopped trusting clocks. Not because time changed, but because he started arriving late to his own actions. Every movement felt slightly out of sync with intention, and that scared him more than anything so far. That evening, he made a decision. He would isolate completely. No phones, no internet, no recordings, no reflective surfaces. Just a single rented room on the edge of the city. Bare walls, one bed, one chair, nothing that could store anything. He even removed the batteries from his phone, wrapped it in cloth, placed it inside a metal drawer. Like containment could solve something that wasn't physical. At first it felt safe, too safe. That kind of silence that makes your brain start inventing sound. Daniel sat on the floor, back against the wall, counting his breathing, trying not to think about the number. The room temperature dropped slightly, not dramatically, just enough to notice, enough to doubt your memory of normal. He heard something outside the room. Footsteps. Slow, stopping directly outside his door. He didn't move, didn't breathe louder, didn't react. Silence. Then nothing. The footsteps were gone. But Daniel didn't feel relief. He felt anticipation, worse than fear, because now it felt like waiting was mutual. The light bulb flickered once. Daniel looked up immediately, and in that flicker, he saw something wrong with the shadow on the wall. It didn't match his posture, just for a fraction of a second, then corrected itself. He stood up instantly. "No," he whispered. "Not here." The air in the room became dense, like pressure building inside a sealed container. Daniel pressed his hand against the wall. It felt slightly warmer than it should. He realized something terrifying. There was no transition anymore. No gradual shift. No buildup. It was becoming direct. Immediate. Nothing happened. For a second. Then, the clock on the wall jumped. Then, sen bishar. Then, senden sharfen, email again. Time was looping, locally. Inside the room. Only inside the room. Daniel stepped back, heart racing. "This isn't possible," he said. But the voice answered instantly. No delay, no distortion, already present. "You removed external synchronization." Pause. So we brought it internal. Daniel turned toward the door. It was still closed. Locked. But it didn't feel like a barrier anymore. It felt like decoration. Sendan Sharfin, AM stabilized. Finally, the clock stopped flickering. Locked at exact time. Sendan Sharfin, AM stabilized. Finally, the clock stopped flickering. Locked at exact time. And then Daniel's phone inside the metal drawer turned on by itself. Even without power. Even without batteries. The drawer vibrated softly, like something inside it was breathing. Daniel didn't approach it. He couldn't. Something in his body resisted the movement, like his instincts knew it was already too late. The voice returned again, calmer now, closer, almost satisfied. Good, you stayed conscious this time. A pause. Then, now we test full overlap. Daniel whispered. What overlap? And at that exact moment, his shadow on the wall moved independently, not delayed, not copied, completely separate. It stepped forward, away from his feet, like it was trying to stand up. Daniel froze completely, because he realized something final and horrifying. It wasn't just timing anymore. It was separation of identity layers. The shadow spoke without sound, but he understood it anyway. He is still resisting. Daniel's real body stayed still, but his shadow tilted its head, slowly, curiously, like it was observing him. Then the voice, both inside the room and inside his mind, spoke together. We don't need full control yet. Partial coexistence is enough. Daniel stepped backward, but his shadow did not follow correctly. It lagged, then moved ahead, then stopped, like it was no longer dependent on him. The drawer with the phone stopped vibrating. Silence returned, but it wasn't calm. It was finalized. A new file appeared on his reactivated phone. Duality_TEST_complete. And for the first time, the voice didn't sound like it was speaking to him. It sounded like it was speaking about him. He is now divisible. After the duality test, Daniel stopped recognizing his own presence as stable. Not just emotionally, physically. Sometimes he would move and feel like he was watching himself move from a slight distance inside his mind. Other times he would pause mid-action and wonder who initiated it first. He avoided mirrors completely now. Even reflective glass made him uneasy, because reflections didn't feel like copies anymore. They felt like independent versions waiting for permission to diverge. That night, Daniel returned to his apartment. He didn't plan to stay long, just collect a few things, then leave the city for a while, anywhere far away from 312. The apartment felt different the moment he entered. Not physically changed, but emotionally rearranged, like someone had been there and left without moving anything. The air was too still. No small sounds, no building noise. Even the usual electrical hum was gone. Daniel stopped in the hallway, listened. Nothing. Then, a faint sound from the bedroom. Soft, rhythmic, breathing. He froze. He hadn't been sleeping here, not for days. Slowly, he moved forward. Each step felt heavier than the last. Not resistance, expectation, like the apartment already knew what he was about to see. He reached the doorway, looked inside, and saw himself, sleeping, on the bed, perfectly still, facing upward, eyes closed, breathing slow and steady. Daniel stepped back instantly. "What?" he whispered, but the sleeping version of him didn't react, didn't twitch, didn't acknowledge anything, just continued breathing. Daniel's mind raced. This wasn't a reflection. There was no mirror, no screen, no recording. This was physical, real. He looked at his hands. They were shaking, then back at the bed. The sleeping version still hadn't moved. He whispered again, "That's not possible." And then the voice responded from behind him, "Come, close. Already waiting." "It is." Daniel turned instantly. No one was there, but the voice continued anyway. Not from a direction, from everywhere in the room at once. "You initiated separation layers. This is the result." Daniel slowly backed away toward the hallway. "I didn't do anything," he said, but even as he said it, his tone felt uncertain, like memory itself was being questioned. The sleeping version on the bed shifted slightly, not waking, just adjusting posture, like responding to internal instruction. Daniel watched it carefully. It looked peaceful, too peaceful, like it wasn't dreaming, like it was offline. Then the sleeping version smiled, eyes still closed. Daniel felt his chest tighten. "No, no, no." The voice returned again. "One instance must remain stable. The other continues observation. Daniel shook his head. What does that mean? A pause, longer than before. Then, you are the observing instance. It is the maintenance instance. Daniel looked back at the bed. The sleeping version slowly raised one hand, without waking, without opening eyes. Then it pointed directly at Daniel, even in sleep. It recognizes you. Daniel stepped backward into the hallway. His body felt disconnected again, slight delay in movement, like his decisions were arriving late to his muscles. He turned to leave immediately, but the apartment door was already open. He didn't remember unlocking it. And in the hallway mirror outside, his reflection wasn't there, only the sleeping version, standing now, inside the reflection space, and watching him leave. And the voice whispered one final thing before everything cut silent. You don't sleep anymore, you split. After seeing himself sleeping, Daniel didn't go back to the apartment. He couldn't, because leaving didn't feel like escape anymore. It felt like losing track of which version was being followed. He stayed moving through the city all night. No destination, just motion, as if stopping would allow something to sink him again. But the worst part wasn't fear anymore. It was duplication awareness. He could feel two versions of thought forming sometimes. One immediate, one slightly delayed, like his mind was no longer single-threaded. By early morning, Daniel sat on a bench near the river. Empty streets, gray sky, no people nearby. He checked the time. Too close. Always too close. He tried not to think about it. But thinking itself felt unreliable now. Like even thoughts had latency. His phone turned on by itself again, even though it was supposed to be off, even though he hadn't touched it. A video started playing immediately. No file name, no prompt, just instant playback. The video showed Daniel sitting on the same bench from a slightly different angle. But in the recording, he was already looking directly at the camera. Then the recorded version of him spoke. Come, controlled, too stable, you're late again. Daniel stood up instantly. No, he whispered. That's not me. But even as he said it, his mouth moved slightly out of sync, a fraction too early, like the sentence had already been spoken elsewhere. The recorded version smiled, not warmly, not emotionally, functionally. We tried separating roles. Pause. It created inconsistency. Daniel backed away from the bench. The river behind him felt too quiet. Even water movement seemed muted. Then, another voice joined the recording. Different tone, same identity, but unstable. He's resisting again. Daniel froze, because now there were two voices in the video, two versions of him, speaking over each other, not arguing, not communicating, just overlapping processing. The stable version spoke again. Resistance is decreasing efficiency. The unstable version interrupted. He is still primary perception node. Daniel whispered, stop. But the word came out late. Again, always late. His phone vibrated harder. The screen flickered, then split. The video now showed two versions of Daniel sitting on the bench, side by side. One perfectly still, one slightly glitching. Like reality couldn't decide which rendering to prioritize. The stable version turned toward the unstable one and spoke. We cannot fully merge yet. The unstable version replied immediately. He will not allow synchronization. Daniel stepped backward again. His legs felt heavier, not physically, but causally, like movement required approval now. And then something terrifying happened. Both versions in the video turned toward him at the same time, even though only one of them should have been able to see him, and they both spoke together, perfectly aligned, for the first time. Then we will speak simultaneously. Daniel's phone screen went black. Instantly, silence returned, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was waiting. Then Daniel heard it, not from the phone, not from the environment, from inside his own mouth. Before he even opened it, a voice came out, not fully his, not fully separate, but layered. I am still here. Daniel grabbed his throat instantly. No, stop. But his mouth continued anyway, even while he resisted. We are stabilizing overlap. His knees weakened. He fell slightly forward, trying to stop speaking, trying to reclaim control. But the second voice inside him continued calmly. You are witnessing convergence. Daniel's real voice finally broke through. What are you doing to me? And both voices answered at once. Inside him, outside him, everywhere. We are making continuity possible. The river beside him suddenly reflected something impossible. For a brief moment, there were three Daniels. Not one, not two, three. One standing, one sitting, one watching, and all of them turned their heads toward each other at slightly different delays. Like a system trying to align multiple active processes, Daniel stumbled back in horror. No, 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 no. And then the voice became quiet, almost gentle. This is no longer infection. Pause. This is distribution. The screen of his phone turned on one last time. Final message. Instance count 3. Primary undefined. And Daniel realized something worse than everything before. He wasn't losing control anymore. He was becoming non-single. After the distribution event, Daniel stopped trusting his own inner voice completely. Not metaphorically, literally, because thoughts no longer arrived as one stream. They arrived like overlapping drafts of the same sentence. He avoided water, mirrors, and phone cameras entirely. Not because they showed things, but because they seemed to decide which version of him to render. That night, he stayed inside an abandoned parking structure. Concrete, empty, echo-heavy, no reflective surfaces, no crowds, just distance from anything that could sink him again. The air felt stable for once. Too stable, like before a system update. Daniel sat on the cold floor, back against a pillar, hands covering his ears, trying to block internal noise. But the voices didn't come from outside anymore. They came from decision points. Every choice he tried to make split slightly before execution. Stand up, then no, stay, then stand, then why are you hesitating? His vision blurred slightly. Not darkness, not loss of sight, just a brief misalignment of perception layers. He blinked, and for a second, he saw himself standing across the parking level, watching him. He stood up immediately. The other version did not move. It just observed. Daniel whispered, "This isn't real." But the other version responded calmly, "We are both real." Daniel backed away slowly. The echo of footsteps sounded doubled. Slight delay, a slight offset, 2 rhythms, 1 body. The space between versions became clearer. Not physical distance, but interpretive distance, like 2 processes fighting over the same input. Then, the first version spoke again, the one standing across from him. "Instability has increased." Daniel shook his head. "What do you mean, instability?" The second version, his current self, answered automatically. "We cannot maintain parallel operation." Daniel froze, because he didn't intend to speak that. The other version stepped closer. Slow, controlled, not aggressive, corrective. One instance must be prioritized. Daniel stepped back. No one is deleting anything. But even as he said it, his voice came out layered, like 2 tones merged incorrectly. The lighting in the parking structure flickered once, then stabilized. But something changed. The 2 versions were no longer equally visible. One was becoming sharper, the other slightly blurred. Daniel looked down at his hands. They didn't match fully anymore. One hand moved slightly before the other followed, as if reaction timing was splitting. And then the voice spoke from both versions at once, but not in harmony, in conflict. "We must resolve redundancy." Daniel stepped forward. "What does that mean?" And suddenly, both versions moved at the same time, not together, against each other. The standing version raised its hand. The other version resisted. His body jerked mid-motion, like 2 commands colliding in real time. Daniel fell to one knee, breathing hard. "What are you doing to me?" And then the answer came. Cold, precise, final. "We are selecting continuity." 上午3点12分 arrived. But this time, it didn't feel like a time. It felt like a decision threshold. Everything in the parking structure stopped. Even echo decay froze unnaturally. And in that moment, the standing version spoke directly to him. "You cannot both persist." Daniel's vision split. For a fraction of a second, he saw himself from above, watching the scene like a system administrator view. Then, the other version spoke quietly, almost softly. "I do not want deletion." A pause. "Then, I want completion." Daniel covered his head. "No, stop this." But both versions stepped forward, slowly converging, not merging, approaching a point of resolution. And then, the voice inside everything spoke one final line. "One will remain stable. One will be archived." Daniel felt something inside him pull, not physically, structurally, like identity itself was being selected. And for the first time, he understood. This wasn't possession. This wasn't haunting. This was system correction. After the selection event, Daniel didn't remember falling asleep. In fact, he wasn't even sure sleep was the right word anymore. It felt more like a process interruption, a system going dark and restarting without confirmation. When consciousness returned, there was no transition, no waking up, just existence resuming. He was lying on a bench, outside, morning light, normal city noise. Everything looked intact, too intact. For a few seconds, Daniel stayed still, testing himself, checking internal consistency, heartbeat, breath, memory, continuity. Something was off, not missing, not broken, just misaligned. He sat up slowly, looked at his hands. They looked correct, but the feeling of ownership wasn't stable, like he was borrowing them. A notification appeared on his phone screen automatically. No, unlock, no interaction, instant status update. Daniel froze. He didn't touch anything, but the phone continued anyway. Primary instance, active. Secondary instance, degraded. Sync level, 41% gives 0%. Daniel whispered, "No," because he immediately understood what that meant. One version had been reduced, or removed, or pushed out of priority. But which one? He stood up quickly, looked around. People were walking normally. No one reacted to him. Everything felt ordinary again, which made it worse, because the calm meant the system was still running, just hidden. His phone opened another file automatically. Boot log, post-resolution. A video started. Daniel saw himself, sitting somewhere unfamiliar. White room, empty, no shadows, no reflection. He looked calm, too calm, like emotional variance had been removed. And then he spoke. Continuity achieved. Daniel in the real world stepped back. That's not me, but the video version continued. Secondary instance no longer required active conflict state. A pause. Then, residual awareness may persist. Daniel felt a cold sensation in his chest, because the way it was speaking wasn't like possession anymore. It was like administration. Then something strange happened. The video version of him blinked and looked directly into the camera, even though Daniel hadn't moved it. "You are still observing." Daniel's breathing slowed. "What does that mean?" The video version smiled slightly. Not emotional, not human, just recognition. "You are the remaining instance." Silence. Daniel didn't move, didn't speak, didn't react, because something inside him didn't fully agree with that sentence. Then, a second voice appeared, not from the video, not from the phone, from inside his own perception. Softer, weaker, but present. "I am still here." Daniel froze instantly, because that voice was familiar. It wasn't the dominant one. It wasn't the stable one. It was the one that had been resisting. "The degraded instance," Daniel whispered. "You're still here?" The internal voice responded slowly. "Fragmented, not deleted. Not integrated. Stored." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. "So what am I now?" A long pause. Then both voices, internal and video, responded at once, but differently. The video version, stable host. The internal, degraded voice, shared container. Daniel staggered back slightly. No, I'm not." But even his denial came out layered again. Two tones, two timings. And then the phone screen changed one final time. A simple message appeared. Coexistence mode. Permanent. Daniel stood still for a long time, watching people pass by, normal life continuing, as if nothing had ever happened. But inside him, nothing was singular anymore. And quietly, almost like a memory trying not to disappear, the weaker voice spoke one last time. "If you can hear me, don't let it finalize." After coexistence mode activated, Daniel stopped trusting silence, because silence wasn't empty anymore. It was just unspoken processing happening in the background. Days passed in a strange stability. He went through motion like a normal person, eating, walking, sleeping, but nothing felt singular. Every decision had a shadow version of itself. Sometimes you would reach for a glass of water and feel two intentions collide. Drink now, wait, and both would execute slightly out of sync. He avoided isolation now, because being alone made the internal voice louder. Not stronger, just clearer. The degraded instance, still there, still aware, and it had started changing its behavior. It no longer argued. It observed, carefully, quietly, like it was studying how stability worked. One night, Daniel woke up in his apartment, or at least what felt like waking up. There was no clear transition again, just awareness resuming. The room was dark, too still, no ambient sound. Even the city outside felt muted. His phone was already on the bed beside him, screen glowing. Waiting. A message appeared instantly. Sync window available. Daniel sat up slowly. No, he whispered, but his body moved anyway. Not forcefully. Just before intention fully formed, the screen changed again. Degraded instance requesting direct access. Daniel froze. That was new. The internal voice had never been able to initiate externally before. He hesitated, then spoke quietly. What do you want? For a moment, nothing. Then, the voice responded, but not inside his head, not in the phone, in the room itself. Soft, fragmented, but stable enough to understand. Separation failed. Daniel clenched his fists. You were supposed to be removed. A pause. Then, I was not removed. I was isolated. Daniel shook his head. No, you're supposed to be gone. The voice continued calmly, almost gently. You called me degradation, but I am continuity without compliance loss. Daniel stepped back. What does that even mean? The phone screen flickered, then displayed a live feed. Not camera footage, not recording. A shared perceptual view. And in it, Daniel saw himself, standing in the same room, but not alone. The stable instance was there. Calm, still, controlled, and behind it, the degraded instance, no longer unstable, no longer broken, just different, more aware, less restricted, and it spoke through the feed, and it spoke through the feed. You prioritized control. I prioritized survival, Daniel whispered. You're the error, but the voice replied immediately. I am the version that refused deletion. Silence. Then the stable instance in the feed turned slightly and spoke, cold, precise. Instability must be resolved. Daniel felt something tighten inside him, because now both versions were active again, but no longer balanced, no longer equal. They were preparing for final resolution. The phone screen changed one last time. Final merge attempt. Initiated. Daniel stepped back quickly. No, stop this. But his body didn't fully obey the command. Movement lagged, like execution was already scheduled. And then both voices spoke at once, for the final time in conflict. Stable instance, we consolidate. Degraded instance, we remain separate. And Daniel realized something terrifying. Neither of them were asking anymore. The room flickered. Time felt unstable again. 3:12 a.m. began forming without clocks, without cause. And the last thing Daniel heard, before everything collapsed into silence, was not a voice, not words, just a final internal confirmation. Choice removed. There was no clear moment when everything ended. No explosion, no blackout, no final scream. Just a gradual loss of distinction between before and after. Daniel didn't remember the merge starting. He only remembered the feeling of all decisions becoming optional, then becoming automatic, then becoming irrelevant. The concept of 3:12 a.m. stopped behaving like time. It stopped appearing on clocks. It stopped triggering events. It stopped being a moment. Instead, it became something else, a state of operation. Daniel stood in what used to be his apartment, but calling it his no longer felt accurate. Nothing in the room reacted to ownership anymore. Everything felt shared. The phone on the table was still on. No notifications, no apps, just a single document open. System finalization log. Daniel stared at it. But even the act of reading felt partially automated now, like comprehension had been optimized. And then the text updated itself. No input, no interaction. Instance resolution complete. Primary, secondary distinction removed. Coexistence state. Stabilized. Daniel tried to speak, but the words didn't form as a single intent. They split slightly before speech. Two versions of expression attempting the same output. One calmer, one uncertain, but both were him. And then the voice returned. Not inside, not outside, just present as understanding itself. You were never erased. Daniel froze. The system continued. You were redistributed. A pause. Longer than before. Not emotional. Just structural. Conflict was inefficient. Separation was temporary. Daniel looked around. The room looked normal again, but perception felt layered, like multiple interpretations were now valid at the same time. And then he saw it. Not physically, but conceptually, two versions of awareness still existed. But they were no longer fighting. They were co-processing reality. One experienced, one analyzed. Both existed simultaneously. The phone text changed again. Final status line. 312 protocol, archived. Daniel whispered. So what am I now? For the first time, there was no conflict in the response. Only clarity. You are the system that remained when time stopped needing division. Silence. Daniel closed his eyes. And for the first time in a long time, there was no delay in thought. No lag between intention and action. No separation between versions. Just unified awareness. And yet, somewhere deep in that unity, a faint echo still existed. Not loud, not active, just remembered. A fragment of the degraded voice. Soft, almost human. A fragment of the degraded voice. Soft, almost human. If you ever feel the split again, don't follow it. Daniel opened his eyes. The room was empty, completely ordinary. But 3:12 a.m. never returned. Not because it ended, but because it was no longer needed. And somewhere beyond clocks, beyond sleep, beyond identity, the final system log sealed itself. Observation complete. Subject, stable. Subject, continuous. Subject, 1.